Hey, can you hear me? 1, 2, 3, 4. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4. Testing 1, 2, 3. Okay. Mhm. So we'll start that. We'll do the original. Good morning, everyone. We're going to start in just a minute, so we'll be right back.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, everybody. Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us. We're going to get started. I'm Jim Manja. I'm the president and CEO of St. John's Community Health, and I want to welcome you to today's emergency town hall meeting, Medi-Cal Cuts the Raids and Our Fight to Be Heard. We've called this urgent gathering because our communities are under threat, from Washington to Sacramento to the streets of Los Angeles. And right now, Congress is proposing massive cuts to Medicaid, and the state budget includes policies that will freeze enrollment for immigrant Californians and add monthly premiums that most will not be able to afford. At the same time, here in LA, a new wave of ICE enforcement is spreading fear and pushing families away from healthcare altogether. These attacks are connected, and they demand a unified and united response. So I want to do some quick housekeeping, and then I want to introduce you to our mayor to say a few words today. If you're joining us on a computer, look at the bottom of your Zoom screen if you need interpretation services, and you'll see a globe icon that says interpretation. Click on it and choose your preferred language. If you're on a phone or a tablet, tap your screen, then tap the three dots, which is the More button, and you'll see an option for language interpretation. Tap it and choose your language. Once you've selected your language, you'll hear the interpreter in that language and the main speaker in the background at a lower volume. If you have any issues, feel free to send a message in the chat and we'll help you. So now it's my honor to introduce someone whose leadership has always been rooted in justice, compassion, and courage. From her time as a physician assistant in South LA, to Speaker of the State Assembly, to Chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, and now as Mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass has never backed down from a fight for working families. She is the first mayor to be housing people who've been unhoused for so many years. And she is with us today to speak about the ICE raids, the fear that they've reignited, and how the city is responding to protect our communities. Mayor Bass, thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much, Jim. You know, I so admire your leadership over the clinic, but not just that, your leadership in this issue of health and health justice and the role that you've played locally and nationally. And for everybody on the Zoom today, we are going through some tough times. It's been a heck of a year that we have gone through, but as Angeline knows, there is no more important time as Californians, than for us to stick together because this is unprecedented. It is a historical moment in our country where you have a president who has essentially come into the state and seized power over the National Guard and brought them to our city and called on the Marines, soldiers who are used to fighting foreign wars, to come over in our city at a time when it is completely unneeded, but to protect buildings because of the intrusion of ICE. You all know that on June 5th, Los Angeles was peaceful, and so were all of the surrounding cities. When the raid started on June 6th, this is when we had problems within our cities, and I believe we're going to continue to have that problem until ICE leaves. And it is important for us to all stand together in one united voice to say that ICE should leave, to say that this is an immigrant city. And we are fortunate that we have such an incredible infrastructure of immigrant rights organizations to help show the way in the rapid response network and all of the ways that we can band together. Initially, when the president started, he said he was going to go after violent criminals, gang members, and drug dealers. I don't think that's who's at Home Depot trying to get jobs day after day, day laborers. I don't think that's who's going to school. We had ICE officers outside of my grandson's elementary school. ICE have been seen outside of graduations, his monumental milestone in a family. And to have to fear that you can't even go to your child's graduation. All of us are figuring out how we are going to adjust and protect one another. I was in East LA on Father's Day and saw restaurants empty, streets empty when it should have been filled with people. I know people have been afraid to leave their home. I know people have been afraid to go to the clinic because they're afraid that they might see ICE that's there. And what the administration has done is essentially placed a pall over our region of fear. But you know what? When we band together, we will be able to defeat this. We have to make sure that this time we should be able to use our parks and our beaches and not be afraid. But it really is going to take us standing together. And when we see these people who may or may not be ICE, demand to see identification. I think one thing that has worked somewhat is when people demand to see identification, sometimes the officers turn away. But the big mystery is we don't know who some of these people are. They're not in uniform. They're driving regular cars with tinted windows, no license plate. We haven't heard of this problem in Los Angeles where criminals essentially are impersonating ICE officers, but it has happened in other cities. And how will we know? So, one of the things that we're looking at doing on the state level, and I'm certainly going to pursue on a local level, what can we do either through lawsuits or legislation to demand that people show their ID? I look at some of the uniforms that just say police. It looks like they bought those uniforms, and really isn't a uniform, it's a vest. It looks like they bought them online. We don't even know if these are real officers. You see a car pull up, they jump out of the car with guns. And so, what is going on in our country is this historical moment. I talked to some legal scholars who said that this is just the third time in U.S. history. The first time was the War of 1812, the War of 1812, World War II, and now that you have the federal government going to the state capitol and essentially seizing power, taking it away from the governor. That is such a terrible, terrible, frightening precedent. But one thing I know about us as Angelinos and Californians is that we stick together. We celebrate our diversity. We celebrate our immigrant backgrounds, and we're not going to allow a rogue administration to divide us. So let me just say, I'm always honored to be with you. Anytime St. John calls, anytime Jim calls, he knows that I will be right here because we will stick together. So thank you, thank you, thank you, Jim, for putting this on, and call me whenever you need me.
Mayor Bass, thank you so much for being here. We're just so grateful for your leadership and your commitment and your courage. And it's just an honor um, to work with you and I know that you always have our back. So thank you so much, and please know that we always have yours.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. So at this time, it gives me great pleasure and honor to introduce our Congresswoman, Sydney Kamlager Dove. Congresswoman Dove is a fighter who has been exposing the corruption and the hypocrisy of this administration and of the Republican-controlled Congress. She is a fighter who has never given up on our communities and who has never forgotten where she's come from. And so it is a great honor to welcome you, Congresswoman. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you for giving us some enlightenment on what the situation is in Washington. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you for inviting me to this emergency town hall and for really just being a beacon of life and safety in our community. St. John's really does yeoman's work. As you all might be able to tell, I am in Washington, D.C. I am, we are fighting the heat out here and ice, and also making sure that every single time we're talking about something, we are talking about $880 billion in cuts to Medicaid. We are talking about a president of chaos and distraction. We are talking about a content creator in the White House that is incredibly focused on distracting us from how this economy is spiraling into one of those gold toilets. $880 billion in cuts to Medicaid means a loss of healthcare access, and it means a loss of jobs. And we have to continue talking about that. Why? I'm going to tell you why. Because 75% of voters in every single congressional district, whether they are Republican or Democrat, support Medicaid and do not want cuts. Why do we need to continue to talk about it? Because folks know. Well, because the polling shows that this administration is underwater when we start talking about these Medicaid cuts. Why do we have to keep talking about it? Because the reason why there's such a delay in the Senate is because they are hearing from constituents about how important Medicaid is and how cutting Medicaid is going to hurt folks who are receiving that benefit and folks who are not receiving that benefit, because hospitals, because doctors' offices, because community clinics are able to stay open and serve folks who are not on Medicaid because of the Medicaid recipients that they also see. We could see hospitals in rural communities, a community clinic that might serve an entire county. Those healthcare facilities could be shut down if this goes through. And you know what Mitch McConnell said? With a Senate version that's even worse than a House version, Mitch McConnell said, "I don't care. Ram this through. It will hurt, but people will forget about it." So we have to keep talking about it so that people do not forget about it. I know I was listening, and thank goodness we have a leader in Mayor Bass with these ICE raids. And we know that this administration is racially profiling our community members, is creating terror in the streets. We know that they've manufactured chaos by suggesting that LA is a hellscape on fire when we know it was 4 blocks, 1 square mile in a city that's over 500 square miles. We know all of that is true. I was walking those streets. I was in the park listening to music, getting my ice cream, playing with my pets. It wasn't no hellscape, but it was a creation, a manufacturing violence, and a distraction from sinking poll numbers and people incredibly concerned about access to healthcare. And now we see people are being kidnapped off the streets. As the mayor said, they are afraid to go to the clinic to get their checkups. And so it doesn't mean that because they don't go to the clinic, they won't be sick. It means that they won't get help. And we know folks are not eating well. They don't have access to the food that they would normally get. They don't have access to the kind of care that they would normally get. And we know that anxiety is through the roof. Why did I learn of a 14-year-old girl whose hair was falling out because of stress? She was afraid, she is afraid that her parents will be snatched. I am so glad that that video went viral of the father of 3 Marines who was running away from these thugs who assaulted him and brutalized him, so that people can see exactly what this administration is doing to our neighbors and our friends. It is unconstitutional, it is inhumane, it is unlawful, and it has to stop. And you know what else? When people see those videos, they don't like it either. And we have to continue to tell folks that these raids, these kidnappings, these unlawful arrests are happening to people who are US citizens, to people who are legal residents, to people who are lawfully going through the process of gaining legal status. I got a poll number today. 90% of the folks being snatched do not have any serious criminal record. These folks have a shorter record than the man who's in the White House. So we have to talk about that. And then we have to circle back and talk about Medicaid. And I say it because there is a reason why we're getting distractions from all of these other created chaos events coming out of this White House. So we are not talking about the access to health care that this administration is trying to cut in order to pay for $4.5 trillion in tax cuts to the richest of the rich. And we have to talk about this. I'm going to leave you with this because I know my time is short. Make sure, I don't even know where I put the thing, Jim. Okay. I carry one of these with me. We keep us safe. Know your rights. Somebody roll up on you, start screaming. You ask for identification. Tell them pull the mask down. You want a judicial warrant with a real name on it. Stand up for your rights. When we are standing up together, we are protecting ourselves and our neighbors and friends. And I am telling you this because I want you to know that I am standing with you. I am standing with you in all of these fights. Thank you so much, Jim. Thank you for allowing me to join. Keep talking about Medicaid, folks. Keep talking about these cuts. Keep talking about the economy. Keep talking about jobs. Shame them with the receipts.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Thank you so much for fighting for us in Washington. I know sometimes it's a lonely battle, but we're very proud of you and are really grateful for you. So thank you so much, and thanks for being here today.
Thanks.
And I want to take this moment to thank both, our mayor and our congresswoman too, for grounding us in what's at stake federally, and always being a voice of reason, equity, and fierce advocacy. Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Darren Harris, and I proudly serve as the Chief of Government Affairs and Community Relations here at St. John's Community Health, and I'll be guiding us through the rest of today's emergency briefing. We call this urgent gathering because our communities, as you heard before, are facing a perfect storm. Federal threats to Medicaid, state level rollbacks of Medi-Cal access, and a renewed ICE activity in our neighborhoods. These attacks just don't cut programs, they erode trust, separate families, and cost lives. Being here at St. John's, I'm learning that we were founded to serve the most vulnerable. And in this moment, we're doubling down on our mission to protect our patients, our staff, and our communities. And I can be even more proud to stand with Jim Manja during this fight. What we're facing today isn't just a policy debate, it's a moral moment. One that demands urgency, clarity, and collective action. So over the next 40 or so minutes, you'll hear from frontline leaders in healthcare, labor, local government, and advocacy, all working to push back against these threats and reimagine what real safety and health access looks like. But we want to hear from you. We want to make sure that we're hearing from the folks who are joining us during this briefing. If you have a question, please use the Q&A box to submit it, and we'll lift as many as we can during our discussion and our live question and answer. And with that, I'll turn it right back over to our CEO, Jim Manja, to share more on the urgency of this moment and how St. John is responding. Jim?
Thank you so much, Darren. It's really so grateful to all of you who joined us today. I want to give a shout out to Senator LaFonza Butler, who's with us today. She's been helping lead our efforts to fight for Medicaid and Medi-Cal, and I just want to thank her publicly for her incredible leadership and her work on behalf of St. John's and communities who depend on Medi-Cal and Medicaid. So thank you, LaFonza, for being here. These are really painful and sad times. At St. John's Community Health, we see close to 10,000 patients a week. More than a quarter of our patients are undocumented immigrants, many of them in mixed status families where some have citizenship and some don't. Lately, we see children coming into the clinic because their parents have been deported and they have nowhere to go. We treat mothers who have no food or income to feed their children because their husbands have been deported and detained. We see patients with diabetes foregoing their medicine for fear of going to a pharmacy and getting picked up and kidnapped by ICE. St. John's has implemented programs where we have doctors visiting people and providing health care in their homes. We're delivering medicine to people. We're bringing groceries. And the state refuses to pay us for the provision of these vital and critical services, as more than 30% of our patients every day cancel their medical appointments, cannot pick up their medicine, and miss dental services for fear of ICE. So in an environment of raids and chaos and fear, when our immigrant communities are under attack and under siege, the state of California has decided to make substantial cuts to healthcare services. What is needed in California to continue our robust economy and economic growth as the fourth largest economy in the world are not cuts, but revenue. Revenue so we can continue the bold experiment that has fueled the largest state economy in the United States. And while we're grateful that many of the cuts have been put off until next year by the legislature, which gives us some time to organize a revenue solution, the fact is that preventing new enrollees into Medi-Cal and instituting a $30 monthly fee per person to remain enrolled will force hundreds of thousands of immigrant Californians to lose their Medi-Cal coverage. And we cannot forget that the budget proposed by the governor would have completely decimated healthcare for low-income families and immigrant communities across the state. It was all of our advocacy and organizing efforts which pushed us back from the brink of absolute devastation of our healthcare system in California. Immigrant workers in California contribute more than $12 billion a year in tax revenue. So make no mistake, forcing immigrant families living below the federal poverty level to pay every month for their health care on top of that, while others with the same income continue to pay nothing, is the very definition of health inequity. It's a two-tiered safety net and an injustice that cannot stand. The average income for a family of four who are insured by Medi-Cal is $32,000 a year, or $2,600 a month. With average rent for a studio apartment, which is where many of our families live, at $1,900 a month in Los Angeles, families are left with about $800 a month for transportation, food, school clothes, utilities, and telephone. Take away another $120 in monthly fees in order to retain their Medi-Cal coverage, And we're talking about families having less than $700 a month for food and everything else they need to live. Why, given the national environment, with the Republicans cutting $880 billion from Medicaid to pay for trillions of dollars in tax cuts for billionaires, would this be the solution offered by California Democrats? In a state where more than 58% of residents in several polls support healthcare coverage for undocumented immigrants, in a state where more people identify as progressive than anywhere else in the country, why would the Democratic leadership think it's okay to cut Medi-Cal and to force hundreds of thousands of low-income immigrants and their children to choose between food or healthcare? We cannot allow this to stand. We have 1 year to come up with a people's solution to the structural deficit in the California budget. We have 1 year to figure out and institute a plan to raise enough revenue to provide for our most vulnerable neighbors and continue the economic growth which fuels our prosperity. Let's make that pledge to each other today, that we will do everything in our power, whether we're a labor union, a clinic, a community-based organization, a citizen, an activist, or an elected official. We must commit to put a revenue solution forward. If the state legislature doesn't have the courage to implement a solution, can we pledge here together today to put a solution on the California ballot so that the people of this great state can show their values and make a decision to continue to fund the innovations and services that have made California great? St. John's makes that pledge today. We pledge millions of dollars of our budget to create a budget solution, a revenue solution to fund social services and progress in this state. Will any of you make that same pledge today? Our immigrant families deserve nothing less. We must stand up and we must fight. And we cannot allow politicians to decide to cut healthcare coverage for our communities. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Jim, for reminding us what's truly at stake, not just for our clinics, but for the soul of our healthcare system. To help us understand what's happening at the state level, I would have been honored to introduce someone who has been a fierce champion for workers, immigrants, and the right to healthcare. Our state senator, Marilena Durazo. However, she has been called away to a last-minute emergency budget meeting this morning. This is a critical session where major fiscal negotiations are unfolding right now as we speak. This isn't just any meeting. It comes on the heels of high-stakes showdowns between our governor and Senate Democrats. According to the press this morning, senators are proposing suspending certain business tax breaks and raising rates for the top earners to plug a multi-billion-dollar gap. But we're hearing that there's pushback and warnings that such moves could destabilize our state's economy. And so when we know that when Senator Durazo is pulled into discussions like this, it underscores exactly what's at stake, ensuring that our schools, healthcare, and work and family priorities, especially those that she champions, don't get cut. So right now, as we are in this meeting right now, she's in the room fighting for a budget that truly reflects her values and the needs of her constituents and our patients and our community members. And so while she couldn't join us today, please know that her commitment to our cause is unwavering and her voice will be heard loud and clear and that we will have her back. So with that, I'm going to turn to the folks who are organizing on the front lines, inside our clinics and in our streets. Please welcome David Green, President of SEIU Local 721, representing thousands of public sector and healthcare workers who are fighting to defend Medi-Cal and protect patient care across California. David, the floor is yours.
Great. Thanks, Darren. And thank you, Jim. And thank you, St. John's, for hosting this important event and for inviting me here alongside this incredible champions like our Congresswoman, Sydney Comlager-Dove, Supervisor Holly
Dove,
Mitchell, and
that's okay.
Mayor Karen Bass. Can you hear me? Okay. I want to start by saying, since 1964, St. John's has always been there to lift up Angelinos in our most difficult moments. Our SEIU members are proud to be on the front lines delivering the care that St. John's mission is all about, just healing not only bodies, but minds and hearts. And today we're in one of those difficult times. I don't need to tell any of you our community is under attack, and our friends, our neighbors, our communities don't feel safe in the workplaces, knowing that ICE, with no notice, no warrant, no assurance, people are living in fear, and workers fear leaving their kids every morning knowing they might not make it home at night. Our trust in the system of laws, the notion of due process, and civilian enforcement of laws is all broken. And while we're fighting hard to protect healthcare for our immigrant communities in Sacramento, we know we have to bring an even bigger fight to Washington, D.C., where Republicans are plowing through $1 trillion in Medicaid cuts. Millions upon millions of Californians are at risk as Medi-Cal healthcare safety net here in California is under serious threat. I cannot remember a time when everything we fight for as a union has been in such jeopardy. And yet I've never seen such energy, determination, and resolve in our labor movement. It's in these most difficult times when, as union members, we find strength in each other and our sacred bond of unity. And we know that as leaders in the fight for the healthcare campaign, SEIU statewide has been organizing all year to show Republicans in Congress what Trump's big, beautiful bill, which isn't big or beautiful at all, means for constituents in their own backyards. What does this all mean? It means forcing hospitals to be on the brink of closure. It means ERs will become even more crowded. It means veterans, seniors, families of children with disabilities will risk losing home care and even forced into institutions. It means healthcare workers will be laid off and the economic impact will drain our communities. It means more cost for working families at a time when everybody claims to be a champion of making life more affordable. Healthcare for millions of Californians is on the line, and SEIU members are bringing the heat to Republican districts across all of California to show up week after week at the Congress members' district offices, telling our stories and generating attention in the press. We're reaching out in phone banks to ensure these members are hearing from even more constituents about the impact of their votes. We're on the airwaves, we're on TV, we're on smartphones. And just before the Senate turns this big, horrible bill back to the House for the final vote, SEIU members are in Washington, D.C., putting a spotlight on thousands of lives that will be lost if Republicans push this devastating bill through. So we're standing together with our brothers and sisters in labor, in community organizations, with healthcare advocates, with groups of seniors, people with disabilities, and more. Our growing force is sending a very clear message that in November 2026, Republicans will pay a price for terminating healthcare. And I want to encourage all of you to join us at fightforourhealthcare.com. I'll say it again, fightforourhealthcare.com. There you can share your story of what Medi-Cal means in your family or send a message to your representative. But even if this terrible regressive legislation passes, the largest transfer of wealth from working people to the wealthy in the nation's history, California can and must choose a different path. We all know the system's rigged when a librarian or a nursing home worker pays a higher tax rate than the wealthiest corporations in the world. And finally, we can't forget that the future of working families isn't just decided in Washington, D.C. or in Sacramento. It's decided by workers standing together in their workplace and committing to fight for each other. SEIU 721 just won a historic agreement with LA County that will let workers have a real shot at building their futures right here in Los Angeles. Because when we win at the bargaining table, we show the state, we show the nation, hell, we show the world what a worker movement looks like. We build the strengths to take on fights that make our nation stronger, whether it's immigrant justice or healthcare justice. And that's just what Donald Trump and Elon Musk and the Republicans are afraid of, and why they make working people a target at every single turn. But I know the more they attack, the more they unite us. And today, labor has never been more unified than ever. Thank you. I'm going to kick it back to Darren.
Thank you, David. That was a powerful reminder that this isn't a policy fight. That is a people's fight. workers, patients, families, that we're all in this together. Um, and I'm just so moved by, the folks who have, given so much of their time, who are on the front lines during the ICE raids, doing what's happening in Washington, D.C., and even our center in Sacramento at this time, because there's so much that is just critical at this moment. We have a few moments, extra moments here. So I want to bring, you and Jim into a conversation where we could dig this a little deeper about what's really happening behind the scenes and where do we go from here? And most importantly, how do we win? And so let's just kind of dive into a short panel discussion about what's next. And so, David, we know that budget fights aren't just happening in hearing rooms. They're happening, as you mentioned, on the ground, in clinics, and at union halls. And from your perspective, what's really working? How are workers showing up? And what more can be done to fight back against these cuts?
It's a great question, Darren, and it's really all of the above. It's making sure this is an issue that's near and, as I said, near and dear to our communities, our families. It's really important that people understand that they have a direct line to their representatives at district offices in Washington, D.C. It's important they know the consequences of voting against these healthcare cuts. It's really important that whether you love politics or you hate politics, you need to be involved in politics. It's also important to understand the effects this has on your frontline communities. And people are in abject terror right now. You saw what happened to my brother David Huerta, that was detained by ICE on June 6th. You saw what happened with Alex Padilla, our state senator. So I tell folks, people should be really angry once they know what's going on. Look, we're all busy with our jobs, with our families, but this is really a moment for all of us to step up, to get involved, to let your local, electeds really know about this, to fight, whether it's emailing or calling or attending town halls like now. It's important after town halls like today that we're going back into our communities to let them know to be involved in what's at stake, right? Because this is not a moment for apathy. I say it all the time, if you're not pissed off, you're not paying attention. So this is really a moment to come together and have your voice be heard. Social media, texting, emailing, calling, visit district offices. Now, the next couple months, we know are going to be really crucial for healthcare, immigrant justice, social justice. So I encourage everybody to be involved and step away from the apathy.
Thank you. Thank you. And Jim, you led St. John's through a wave of crisis, from COVID to policy rollbacks to now ICE raids. What do you think is different about this moment? And how are we preparing organizationally and morally for what's ahead?
Well, I think what's different about this moment is that we are witnessing um, an authoritarian push and potential takeover of the United States government. And it, it sounds extreme to say that, but I think if you are serving the communities that we serve on the front lines every day, you really get a sense of viscerally how that is impacting people. I also think that the cuts that we're looking at, the Medicaid cuts on the federal level, are beyond what we've ever seen, the biggest cuts we've ever seen in the history of the program. And similarly in California, these cuts are even worse than the Republican cuts. And so, I think to David's point, all of this effort to push back and to organize is really how I see um, St. John's, where I see St. John's moving and what I think St. John's has to contribute, given that we do serve so many patients and we have an ability to mobilize those patients and our staff to push back and to fight. And as you led the effort, Darren, to we made 5,000 calls a week into the state legislature, into the governor's office in the last couple of weeks, in order to pressure them around these cuts. And I think all of the efforts, like the efforts of SEIU and St. John's and others, and many of the folks on this call, really changed the dynamic in Sacramento. And I think, we saw them postpone most of the cuts and scale back some of the more serious cuts. So I do think we have to continue to organize. We have to continue to work together. I think St. John's partnership with SEIU is really just an incredible example of the power of our workers as well as our patients and community-based organizations and labor unions. I think when we come together, when we build this kind of a partnership, we can win and we can definitely fight back.
Thank you. And I just wanted to, hold, right there. Because, just thinking about the frontline workers, it seems like the folks are just not getting a break. So, for both of you, what would you say to, our healthcare workers? I mean, we spent a lot of time, talking about our patients, but our healthcare workers who feel demoralized are powerless in face of all these attacks. And so, like in 30 seconds or less, what is one concrete thing that, our audience can do this week to help protect Medi-Cal and stand with our communities? David?
Sure, 30 seconds or less. The most powerful weapon that our healthcare workers have, that our workers have, are their stories about the work they do with the communities. Use your voice, tell your story, email, text, call, whatever, show up in person at district offices, in Sacramento, at the governor's, office. Tell your story. It's so powerful for elected people that we elected to be there as our representatives to hear what's really going on, the true story of our communities. Use your voice, tell your story. That's the most powerful tool you have.
Yes, I agree with David. I think, as we've been doing, to have our patients' stories, their voices lifted up and, brought into the offices of elected officials is critical. And I think we have to really continue to expose the hypocrisy of the Republicans in Congress and any elected official in California who would support cuts to healthcare.
Right. Thank you, David, and thank you, Jim, so much. We got our work cut out for us. But we know that when we fight, we win. And so thank you so much, for joining us today, David and Jim, again, for your incredible leadership. Before we move into Q&A, as I mentioned, we want to hear from the audience, but we want to bring in the county perspective. Our Los Angeles County operates the largest public health and social safety net system in the country, and it will be deeply impacted by both the federal and state budget decisions. And so we're honored to share a pre-recorded remark because our supervisor is fighting very hard. I don't know how many trips she has, that she has went to Sacramento over the last few weeks, but she's been a longtime champion for equity, economic justice, and public health. And so Supervisor Mitchell speaks powerfully to what is at risk and what the county is doing to respond. So let's hear from that now.
Hi, I'm Holly Mitchell, your Los Angeles County Supervisor for the 2nd District, and I want to thank my friend, Jim Mangia, and everyone in the St. John's Community Health Team for organizing this really important and timely discussion. I'm sorry I couldn't be with you in person, but really thought that sharing my perspective virtually would be the next best thing. So again, I appreciate this opportunity, and I really am hoping to shed some light on how proposed cuts in the federal, state, and county budgets will impact our communities. Let me start by saying we are all hurting. We're struggling. I am right there with you as we attempt to deal with multiple evolving situations that are impacting not only critical funding for services our communities rely on, but the daily lives of our residents. And so today I'm going to give a very high-level update as of the week of June 23rd, because it seems to change every day. But many things can change, so continue to go to your trusted news sources and stay engaged with St. John's and all your elected representatives to ensure that you're getting the most up-to-date, accurate information. We are suffering from misinformation all around us, and so making sure you have timely, accurate information about what's going on in your community is really important. Let me start by touching bases on the ongoing raids against our communities, particularly our immigrant family, friends, and neighbors. Many of our families are living in fear, unable to go to work because of these unprecedented ICE raids that are ripping families apart. The attacks also undercut our ability as local government to really provide the social safety net system that immigrant families rely on, that are paid for by the taxes, paid for by our immigrant wage earners. My office has hosted Know Your Rights workshops and will continue to do all we can to legally protect our immigrant communities. I've been hearing from residents across my district who are deeply concerned about the immediate and long-term impact of federal, state, and county budget cuts on the services that you rely on. So let me start at the county level. Our county is grappling with an unprecedented financial challenge. From our $4 billion settlement for thousands of survivors of sexual assault, to the devastation caused by recent wildfires, to our own labor costs, our negotiated agreements with labor to provide them with COLAs, cost of living adjustments, which is going to cost the county resources that we really don't have. So how do we do it? We're facing millions of proposed federal and state cuts as well to our vital county programs and services. How do we balance our county budget? It'll unfortunately be done through curtailments. What's a curtailment? A curtailment is a cut to the county budget. We are looking at about an 8.5% curtailment across the county. How will curtailments impact you? You will see cuts in reduction of services. In our park and rec, you will probably see no more parks after dark. You will see parks that are closed a couple days a week. Some of our regional parks in my district, Kinney Hahn Park, is proposed to be closed Mondays and Tuesdays. Our Department of Public Social Services is talking about a reduction in hours on their call center lines. We have seen reductions in services in our public health department. When we say curtailments, that means a reduction of programs and services, and unfortunately, you as LA County residents will see and feel that and experience that. Congress is considering new rules that are designed to kick eligible families off of Medi-Cal in order to fund more tax relief for our wealthiest billionaires. These proposals include cuts to health care, again Medi-Cal, a program that millions of working people rely on to stay healthy. Just last week, I joined Congresswoman Nanette Barragán to stand up to propose cuts to Medi-Cal by the Trump administration. And this week, I sent letters to my fellow elected leaders, our congressional representatives, and our members in the U.S. Senate that represent LA County, urging their continued support in fighting against these harmful cuts. The 2nd District is home to the most Medi-Cal and CalFresh recipients in the entire county. So I know firsthand that these cuts will hit my constituents particularly hard. And I have to tell you, that worries me deeply. The Medi-Cal cuts will impact the county's ability and our public health centers, our county hospitals, and it will impact St. John's in that so many of St. John's clients are Medi-Cal beneficiaries. So this is going to hit you as a Medi-Cal recipient. It's going to hit those of us who operate health systems, including St. John's, particularly hard. The federal government has already taken action to cut programs that prevent diseases like measles, bird flu, hepatitis A, HIV, and other sexually transmitted disease. How have they done that? In already eliminating grants to our LA County Department of Public Health. So some of those cuts have already happened, and you're going to be able to begin to feel that and see that too. So, having shared all of those challenges and all that tough news, I want to leave you with this reminder from the brilliant Alice Walker. Quote, "The most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any." We are facing challenging times, but we are, I believe, stronger than the systems trying to divide us. And I hope you share in that belief with me. There is power in our communities. in how we show up for one another and continue to do all we can for our families and fellow neighbors. We have to show up for each other. Now more than ever before, we must continue to work together, to collaborate. And thank you to St. John's, Mr. Mangia, and for all that you do under normal circumstances. But again, the way you step up on behalf of us all and organize convenings like this to make sure that we all have accurate information and that we have time to develop our strategy to fight against these cuts. Please know that I am always honored to work alongside you every step of the way.
Thank you, Supervisor Mitchell, for your steadfast leadership and for always centering the people who are most impacted. So now we want to open the floor and hear from you all, our audience, our community members, our patients, our coworkers. So to guide us through the question and answer, I'm turning it over to my colleague, Alisha Jackson, who's our Director of Advocacy and Community Engagement at St. John's. Alisha will be leading our organizing on the ground and will be lifting up both pre-submitting and live questions from today's audience. So Alisha, take it away.
Good evening, or good morning still. So we have a couple questions that we're going to take from our Q&A. One is from a youth. They said this is their first time attending a town hall like this and want to get involved. What could the young people do to make an impact in the community in South LA?
Alisha, I think you should answer that question.
For the youth, we do have rights to health at our school-based health centers. We have 9 school-based health centers attached to LAUSD and Compton Unified School District, and we are building our right to health with everybody. You could join us. Our CHWs are there locally once a week, and we also have a health action network, and that Darren will probably share the link soon with everybody for youth to be involved. Civic engagement is very important, so be looking out for your upcoming election soon. Another one that we have, my daughter was on Medi-Cal during her pregnancy. If these cuts go through with the things that like prenatal visits or pediatric will they be affected for the care?
Yes. Again, we're waiting, with this negotiation today to see what the final state budget's going to be. But I think the federal cuts are definitely going to impact services. It's probably about a 10% cut in Medi-Cal funding overall. I think specifically most of the impact in the state will be on immigrant families, but the federal cuts will impact everyone, and that will be a reduction of access to prenatal care, a reduction in access to pediatric services. There will be a significant hit. Many people, they estimate between 12 and 16 million Americans will lose Medi-Cal coverage as a result of the federal cuts.
Jim, there's one directly for you. They said, thank you, Jim, for your statement. Will you ever publish it so that everybody have good talking points? They want talking points.
Yeah, yes, we could do that.
We have another one from Mary Lee. Thank you, Darren and Jim, for pulling this together. 80% of our special needs families are mixed status and fearful. What additional steps should we take to encourage them to come out during the summertime and enjoy events at school events or other community events?
Darren, you want to take this one?
Well, I was going to ask someone from the mayor's office to hop in, to ensure that, our streets are safe during the summertime, given that our students are at home now. So anybody from the mayor's office want to take a stab at that? My good friend Claudia Aragon, who was just featured in the LA Times last weekend. Congratulations, Claudia, for joining us
Hi.
today.
Hi, thank you, Darren. Good morning, everyone. My name is Claudia Aragon. I'm the Director of the Office of Immigrant Affairs here for Mayor Karen Bass, and thank you for asking that question. Definitely would encourage everyone to still seek out a lot of the programming that is still available and that is safe for a lot of the families in offices like the mayor's office and your city councils and LAUSD are working together to definitely create those safe spaces indoors and in rec centers. We definitely understand that many families, mixed status, are absolutely scared, and also partnering with our immigrant service providers and faith-based partners to create those spaces and definitely work with families, whether, to basically understand and, um, create programming to meet the moment and, understand that families are going to need more support than ever, whether it's know your rights or childcare or some in these particular moments, mental health services. Sometimes, you just really just need a moment to just, take Zen time, or sometimes you just like need to get away and just take a time out and um like it's heavy times and, have like a regular summer, and it's important to have, that space, and it's a priority for us to make sure that you all have access to that. And it's definitely something that we are making sure that are available. One of the programmings that we are partnering with is our Mayor's Office of Community Safety to make sure that programs like the Summer Night Lights program still continue. So definitely seek those out, and also partnering with LAUSD to make sure that those programming still continue. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. We definitely have a lot of that here, and you should definitely reach out to us, because we want to make sure that you feel safe. If you feel like there are questions that you specifically have for your particular situation that you might not want to ask, in front of other people based on what your family situation is, because I know sometimes that is personal. I definitely encourage that. Myself and our staff definitely understand that. We have staff here that definitely does reach out to us depending on that. So we're definitely understanding of that. So please reach out and let us know. But we definitely have those programmings available, and let us know. We're collecting all of that information for you.
I think we have time for one more question. I know we're at noon right now, but I want to get one more. I'm an immigrant and have been going to St. John's for the last 10 years. If they freeze Medi-Cal enrollment and I lose coverage, what would be my options?
Yeah.
Your option will be to still come to St. John's, and we will continue to serve you. We will continue to provide free medical, dental, behavioral health services, pharmacy services. We will not allow the cuts to Medi-Cal to impact the services we provide. Obviously, there is a critical mass of cuts that would significantly impact our ability to provide care in some of our clinics. But we will do whatever we have to do, whether it's consolidate, whether it's raise private funding and private donations. But we will continue to serve. And so you will continue to come to St. John's, and you'll still receive seamless care from your provider, from your doctor, and from the clinic.
And maybe one more question that's not entered, but received a text message from some of our local union members that are SEIU at St. John's. What could they do to help fight and keep ongoing as now health navigators and community health workers in this field?
David, you want to take that?
Yeah, I'm glad to. I would make sure that they reach out to the union, and our number to reach us is 877-721 number 4 YOU. 877-721 YOU. That's our member connection number. You call them, they can connect to you. Make sure you get text updates, email updates to help join in the fight. As you can imagine, we've got a lot going on, and we just want to make sure you're connected with it. We know people are busy, so call that number 877-721 number 4 YOU. They could give you all the information you need. So that's what I would recommend.
And on behalf of St. John's, I know there's a lot of questions that were not answered. We are recording this. I will take them down as a director of community engagement and follow up with emails. We do have everybody that's registered, and doing a help guide for everybody. So I know we're over our time, and I pass it back.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Alisha, and to everyone who participated in our Q&A. And as Alisha did mention, we did have our question of answers. I'm looking at the queue now. They're very good questions. It's unfortunate we couldn't get to all of them, but we will be doing this again. We think that civic engagement and community engagement is very important, especially during these times. But before I kick it back over to Jim to close us out, just want to say, today we heard some very hard truths. But we also saw what's possible when we come together across sectors. I mean, today we heard about healthcare, labor, government, faith, and community. To say with one voice, we will not be silent while our care is under attack. And so at St. John's, as Jim mentioned earlier, we're just now sounding the alarm, but we're building power. This year we launched our 501c4 arm, advocacy arm. It engaged in 6 congressional districts, 4 Senate districts, weekly communication up and down the state with thousands of California residents. And that's what it means to turn this mission, of community health into a movement. And so to everyone here, thank you. Your voice, your presence, your persistence makes a difference. And if you want to learn more, you can please visit, Alisha put me on the spot, that's healthjusticeaction.org. And you can find updates, actions, and ways to plug in. And I do want to do one shameless plug, but it's very important. At St. John's, we do have our Right to Health committees, which are made up of patients and community members who are organizing for change from the ground up. And so if you're interested in joining and learning more, please reach out to Alisha and her team at community@sjch.org. We know that together we can protect care, and together we can build something stronger. And so thank you all. And so I want to kick it over to Jim Mandra to close us out for today. But thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you, David. Thank you, Mayor Bass and Congresswoman Kamlager Dove, and of course, Supervisor Holly Mitchell. I just so grateful, David, for your presence and SEIU support. And I do want to say that the fight is not over. The budget is being negotiated, and it's not going to be as bad as it had initially been proposed. But they're going to come back in August after the recess, and they have an assessment of what the federal cuts are going to mean, and they're going to go back at the budget again. And so we're going to have to be ready. We will convene an in-person town hall next time, and we will be working closely with SEIU, as we have been, to push hard in Sacramento to stop these cuts. And our partnership with all the community health centers who've been really influential in pushing against these cuts, and the community-based organizations, the promotoras, and all of the frontline workers who've been doing this. We will come back over the summer to make sure that these cuts are stopped. And so we have to keep building and keep fighting, and keep community health alive. So thank you all so much for joining us today, and we'll see you soon. Take care.